Hello. Never really. Today, basically, if you're watching this video of it, I give people a few minutes to kind of just. Otherwise, it's just fine. I am going to basically run kind of my entire editing. What we did, Banff, and it was a very, very interesting session, I guess. It essentially what happened was that a lot of forest fires kind of Alberta area, and it was audio problems already. I hope this doesn't go poorly. My struggle. Oh no, static. All right, I'll try to fix this quickly. Try this thing and this setting. Is that better or worse? If it's still the same, I am going to switch to, it'll be less good audio, but it will be, somebody let me know. So the struggle essentially is that, not better, okay. I will switch to, what other input capture will function? All right, how about this? Is this a little better? Quality, hopefully. On. The struggles. All right, we're gonna go off the webcam now. Hopefully better. No sound? All right, I'm banking on this working. Yeah, thank you so much for the assistance, everyone. This microphone, the Rode Procaster, is good a lot of the time, but I guess for live streams, maybe it's not so good, and it goes over the USB codec. It's a lot. So this is simpler solution: video, audio, same thing. So I'm going to kind of run you through what I was doing this past week, which was out in Banff, and we were basically kind of in forest fire, like smoky territory. It was pretty crazy. I am currently in photo mechanic, as somebody messaged and said in the chat already. This is photo mechanic. It's what I call through. So I went through and made my selects based on all the images that I wanted. This was essentially the way that this shoot came together was that this is actually my old boss. So we did 2 engagement sessions at the same time, which was pretty crazy, but they were both friends. So this is Mark. Maybe there's a photo of Mark's face somewhere. So this is a very dramatic image of Mark here and his wife Shannon. Mark was my original, when I was just getting into photography, I was basically not making enough in photography. I wasn't making any money at all. I was just like, essentially I was shooting bands and I was getting paid in free t-shirts, which was great. I got to see all the bands that I like to go see. And I guess more importantly than that, I actually had an excuse to email like booking agents and tour promoters and managers to ask to go and see like the high-end shows that were coming to Toronto, which was really, really awesome. Unfortunately, it wasn't paying me any money, so I was getting to do what I loved, but the back end was that I had to work at Outback Steakhouse, as well as essentially I got in touch with Mark, and he was working for a projector company, and I was like, do you need somebody to just do just media in general, which is like Photoshop, which is I guess like photography, video eventually, and it was pretty much like anything. My role became anything that I essentially tried to do. So if somebody was like, hey, can you make us like digital picture frames for a trade show? that became part of my role that now for every trade show, I had to make these digital picture frame Photoshop montages of the product. So Mark gave me that job. It was 15 hours a week. It was entirely flexible. And it is probably the reason that, one, I got to travel with my camera, which is awesome. It was the marketing department of this projector company that sent me to like the Weather Channel for an afternoon in Atlanta to do a quick shoot and come back. So it's like, I don't know, it's just really cool that we finally got to reconnect. He is the marketing, I think he's CMO, or very high up of Brewster Travel. If you're going to Banff or area or Jasper, I recommend that you check them out because they have a lot of properties and a lot of cool stuff kind of in the area. They actually own most of Jasper now, which is kind of funny, at least all the tourist attractions of it. So as you can see, pretty crazy smoke-wise. I expected to go out and get all these like beautiful mountainscapes that you could just see forever. And very quickly I realized that we weren't really going to have that. The huge bonus of this was that when we went out, pretty much everything was just in sunset. So when we went out to do photos, even though this was a little bit before golden hour, it looks like golden hour. It began looking like golden hour probably around like 5 p.m. Sunset is officially like 9:20, I believe, out that way. And it was like from 5 until 9:30, it was kind of this like weird, eerie golden hour. And then it just got really dark really fast. So the two lenses that I am using on this shoot, and you can kind of tell, I don't know if you'll be able to tell in this live stream, because it is a little bit, I'm assuming it's trying to broadcast at 1080, but I would suspect it's probably coming at you at 720, so you won't be able to see all the detail. I will be posting the video, the behind the scenes video of this Banff shoot entirely probably tomorrow, assuming my pluralize worked out. A lot of different audio video sources kind of going in. Trying to sync everything together, put together a video. So that will be out hopefully tomorrow. If not tomorrow, it'll be out Friday. And that will have like proper, you'll be able to see everything. So you'll be able to see these edits in full proper everything. For now, I guess it's just kind of like the color and the general overall look and feel that I'm going to be attempting to kind of show you. So these are the images that I selected. These are all straight out of camera. I used the Nikon, you can see my lens choice over here. So this is the Nikon 58mm 1.4. ISO is 31, which is essentially the base ISO of a Nikon D850. Shooting in manual mode, AFC, pretty much everything you need to know kind of in there. And I was also using, I don't know if it was for this shot here, I was also using my 24 1.4, which is another lens that I love. And the thing that I love the most about it is that just kind of like the general softness that you get from it, and kind of the fall off that as soon as the focus hits, it just kind of like nicely rolls off the back and creates a very beautiful out of focus background. That's why I love this 85mm lens, and I use it quite a lot. If you've followed my Instagram, you'll see that most of my favorite shots tend to be from that lens. And I am shooting it wide open for the most part. If I'm in any really dramatic lighting conditions, I do kind of tone that down, and I make it something more like f2, just because I know that there's, essentially it's a very poor, expensive lens. So it's a bad lens, very expensive, creates a very good look in certain circumstances. And there is a bit of a learning curve. Like if you've ever picked up a tilt shift, you think that you're going to like pick up a tilt shift and you're going to be creating like these amazing images, but there is pretty much like a 6-month learning curve on it where you're just going like way too hard, creating stuff that you think is amazing but is not really that great. And then 6 months down the road, you're like, okay, I kind of figured out how I can salt and pepper this in rather than just having it take over the scene. I find that with this, you can use it in very specific circumstances and it works very well. If it's anything that's a little bit, I guess, like too backlit or too dynamic, or if there's just something white with something black right up against it, like Mark's suit here, it's something that, I don't know, you just have to be super aware of, and you don't notice it in camera, and you get back to your computer and you realize that like half of your shot just looks like it's all ghosty and weird, or half of your shoot is like that. And it's kind of sad. So anytime you pick up a new lens, just kind of begin to experiment with it and make sure that you're looking at your photos to verify that it is, in fact, that everything's in focus coming out of the lens as it should be. Another thing that you can do, I have a video on the channel somewhere. It's basically about how to auto fine-tune your lens, or AF fine-tune your lens. And it's pretty much like with my Nikon D850, it's very strange because it is a non-linear process. So if I go into the menu and it's like, okay, so this lens it's focusing just a little bit too close, I figure if I bump it to like +1, it'll get closer to the focus point it should be, and +2 should be even closer. With the Nikon D850, it is completely random, it seems. So it is like a +1 in some circumstances, and then +8 will be like the next best digit. So you have to kind of go through everything. If you're using an older Nikon, this is, I guess, specifically a Nikon camera system, then it's a little more linear, that if things are out of focus, if it's too forward focus, that you can bump it back. Nikon D850, D5, I think D500, all are like very, very strange. So just going to run through these photos quickly. These are, again, straight out of camera, and we're going to go into Lightroom and edit them. I couldn't really select one that I liked best from here, so I just kind of picked a few of them. And if you did see these on Instagram, they were actually edits from my phone from the JPEG. So this is actually the first time that I've played with the RAW files, which is kind of crazy, especially with things like this with such, I don't know, like kind of dynamic range that I don't even know if I'll be able to really save kind of what I want to do there, because it is, again, forest fires, it's very low visibility. Also these kids playing here. If you're ever in the Banff area, I highly recommend you go up to the Norquay Lookout, and that is this spot right here. It's really, really cool. It looks over, this is the city of Banff. Very beautiful. We also went down to this lake over here at the end of the shoot, and we also went up the Banff Gondola, which I'm not really sure where it is, so not super helpful, unfortunately. So cycling through these. What we did was I kind of scouted through a few of the spots that I knew that I wanted to go prior to basically getting everybody over. We showed up around 3 in the afternoon, and I went up to that Norquay Lookout to make sure it was what I wanted. I scouted it on Instagram, which is where I do most of my location scouting, but I really do want to see it on the day. If somebody's taking like a beautiful fall image up there and it is currently forest fires in August, like obviously it's not going to look the same. There is some kind of real-time update stuff, I guess, there with Instagram as well, but I like to just go and make sure that it is a location that I want. So we picked this location, we picked one kind of on Tunnel Mountain, and then we picked a lake, and we went up the gondola, and that was about it. About 2 hours total. The reason that there's two couples is because Mark and Shannon, I was like, hey, do you have any friends that would also want to come and get some photos? And they were like, yeah, our friends do. Would probably, him and Diana would want to come out and also get some photos. So it was a free shoot, so it was kind of like the more the merrier. And honestly, like I thought it would be kind of strange doing a photo session with both with two couples, and it turns out it's actually kind of better, I think. So I don't know if I'm going to experiment with this again in the future, but the way I think with like when you're just photographing one couple, it's very much like you're out there, you're taking the images, and it's kind of I don't know, they're almost too into the process. Whereas when you have two couples and it's like, we're gonna do some photos of you guys and we're gonna flip around and we're gonna do same location, different look with the other couple. The people that aren't having their photo taken have some time to relax and kind of see what the other people are doing and not be just like constantly on. So it's very, very interesting, I think. And it's not something that I've ever done, and I don't think it's something that too many people have done, but I might recommend it if you have two couples that know each other that both want to go out and get some photos taken. All right, so these are kind of the 37 selects, 32 selects that I have done, and I'm gonna bring them over here into Lightroom. This is Lightroom CC, and the struggle might be here, processor power, so if I go a little staticky or if the video cuts out, it's probably because Lightroom is a resource hog. So my import settings, I don't really do anything. If I'm outsourcing these, if I'm bringing these to my editor, I click the Build Smart Preview so that it builds smart previews of everything that I'm importing, so I can just send them the catalog. And basically what Smart Previews does is it has all the DNGs kind of built into it, so all the kind of temporary RAW files, I guess, or the Adobe version of the RAW files that are way less megabytes. That all gets loaded into the actual Lightroom catalog, so if you want to send something over for somebody else to edit, they're able to do that with essentially like full control over your RAW file, and then they send the catalog back to you and you reconnect it, or it should do it automatically to your actual RAW files. I'm not going to do that today. And usually I come down here and I add my Summer 18 Warm, which is usually my favorite preset for everything, but these images specifically are kind of on the outer range of what I usually edit with kind of the forest fires and I don't know, a lot of different colors happening, and I think the scene is just a lot warmer than it usually is. So, and if your images are coming up weird and they're not loading in sequential order, you just go View, Sort, capture time, and that should put everything into time. I was also shooting 2 bodies, so my 24mm lens was on one body, and my 85mm lens, or my 58mm lens. That's funny, the inverse. So I prefer a 58 or an 85. Never thought about that. That's funny. And so yeah, 2 bodies. Hopefully everything kind of is going in sequential order. I do have everything kind of time-stamped and connected, but from time to time, if basically what happens is that if you connect your camera to your phone to like upload something, which I've been doing, it resyncs the clock to what the actual time is on your camera, which might put it out of sync if you have 2 cameras that you've kind of synced together. If you connect it to your phone. So maybe word of warning, if you are actually at a wedding day and you are taking pictures and there's like yourself and then 2 other photographers also taking pictures, or yourself and your second has 2 camera bodies, and you connect one to your phone, don't do that. Or if you do, make sure that it doesn't change your internal clock on your camera, because then when you go to sync all the cameras and kind of adjust everything by time, something's just going to be like randomly, it'll just switch like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever the actual correct time is halfway through the day. And that's probably one of the bigger pains that I experience, I guess, on a wedding day, which is probably a good thing, I guess. If that minor inconvenience is the biggest pain that I have in post-processing, it's pretty good. All right, so you can see my settings up here. What I shot it at, ISOs, all of these things, also over here, I guess. And quite honestly, like, this is just straight out of camera, and I'm like kind of happy with it. So maybe the forest fires and everything are kind of coming together. I'll run through kind of the presets that I usually use. I use these specific presets. There's a link in the description if you want to buy them. I use them just to keep my style consistent, so that I'm not like jumping from somebody like Sam Hurd, who he has amazing presets, but they're very, very kind of like harsh yellows almost, which you can fix by cooling down. I like to shoot warm, and then I kind of have these all, I guess, figured out to deal with warmer tones. So in camera, I'm always shooting either shade white balance, or I'm shooting the house shade white balance or cloud white balance. So one of those 2 pretty much all the time. And I think that those end up looking kind of the absolute best for me. And I think it's also like, it just comes down to your personal taste, that what you kind of like the best out of this. So I just kind of mouse over everything for a preview. That's a little bit too green. The first one is a little bit almost too gray. I kind of I want to save some of the like kind of in-camera warmth to it. So cycling through these, that's getting a little better. You know what? I think that the summer 2018 warm is kind of the one that I like the best for this. So again, Lightroom's a little bit of a struggle here. There we go. Preset applied. And for the most part, I would say most images, all I'm doing is I'm bumping up the exposure a little bit and bringing the black point down. This is a little bit different because the conditions are a lot different from what I'm usually shooting. So I'm going to use this this brush up here just to add a little bit of shadow boost to Stu's face here. And a lot of it really is just kind of figuring out what looks best to you and kind of going with it. So it's, I would say that it's like almost just time and just doing this over and over again and making sure you look at like photographer that you really like their work, that you kind of study their images, that nothing's really a secret. Everything is just out there for everyone to see. So there's no secret sauce when it comes to this. Like, as you can see, this is kind of like 3 clicks. But kind of just have an eye for how your favorite photographers light things, what things look like, how they pose in certain lighting conditions. With today, it was, I would say, like kind of the dream lighting condition, that even though the sun's actually coming from kind of this corner up over here. So the direct sun is actually right kind of coming from this line here, but it actually looks really good. But that's why Drew's face was a little dark on the side. And when you're in such a dramatic landscape, you don't really have, I guess, the ability to like completely pivot around and shoot with the sun at the back if you want that nice warm wraparound light. That if the cool, interesting things are happening in that direction, you kind of have to deal with it and work with it, whether you do that through timing or you do that through just hoping that it's cloudy, or you just do that by showing up specifically in mountains that golden hour kind of like happens and then the sun goes behind the mountains. And then there's kind of this ambient period that's really, really nice for a relatively long period of time, like almost an hour, I would say, where there's no direct sunlight. But I actually do really like the direct sunlight, so that's maybe one of my things that I am looking for. And if I could have done this shoot a little bit differently, so the way that this kind of came together was that this first location here was technically our throwaway location because we wanted to go to it, but we didn't really want to go there at the peak time of like the most beautiful sunset of the night. So we went there first, and it turned out that it was my favorite location, just the way that everything kind of aligned. So I guess that maybe goes to tell you about how don't get too attached to locations and just like force yourself to use them. That sometimes you'll be happily surprised with how interesting things happen when they are not suspected. All right, so I consider that first image pretty much done. I don't think that there's anything that I would really do to it. This vignette up here is all kind of natural, and it is a natural vignette from this 58mm technically incorrect lens. But again, I really do love kind of the overall feeling of this photo, which I really, really love. And sorry, I kind of forgot that. I'll answer some questions quickly. Which mode do you prefer? Manual. I prefer manual for everything. This shoot is pretty much entirely manual. It is entirely natural light as well. We did not bring, I brought like a speed light for the wedding. The wedding's 2 days after this, which will also have a video. I didn't bring any modifiers or anything because I knew for the most part that I wasn't bringing a light stand to set up a softbox to get the proper off camera. So just everything natural light today and for the rest of this day. And I like manual because it really speeds up my post-production process. For this is a little different than my typical post-production process, I guess. But usually what's happening is that I have a lot of photos within the same lighting conditions. So if it's a ceremony, there's a pretty good chance that the entire lighting conditions is like the same across the board. So I edit one photo and then I sync that across every other photo that in the timeline down here looks like similar to that photo. And that brings everything to at least kind of that like vanilla standard. And from there, I would be able to kind of go in and tweak anything that needs tweaked. But that really does kind of speed up the process of editing. And my entire editing process, if I sit down and I'm focused, is somewhere usually about 2.5 hours max for a typical wedding that I shoot. And that includes culling, and that includes the editing, and that includes, I guess that's when you hit export is kind of when I stop that clock, because my computer takes like a year to export files. Which app do you recommend on cell phones? I use a combination of, so I use Visco usually for the overall look of things. And I kind of tune that preset, I guess, to what looks like my preset, which is essentially, I edit to look like this. So I use Visco for that. I find that the Visco iPhone app is actually way better at processing JPEG files, because it's like, that's kind of what it's meant to do, is process iPhone photos. So it's very, very skilled at that. So I have no problems editing in Visco. If I need to do anything like healing brush or removing objects, usually I use Snapseed for that. And then I kind of put the finishing touches on, like a split tone, as well as like a little bit more of exposure and different small corrections actually in Instagram before I post it. So that's kind of my editing style. I would usually say that even if I do edit a photo from RAW on my computer, I send it to my phone, and then from my phone I'm usually messing with it a bit in Instagram, because I find that specifically if I edit anything on my MacBook Air, it's completely different from anything that I would ever see on a phone or you would ever see on a computer. So don't maybe look at it on a different screen if you're editing on a MacBook Air, because the way that it's lit is not right. But when I'm on my actual home computer here, it's a little bit more accurate, but I still do finish everything for an iPhone, because that is how pretty much everyone is consuming my photos these days. Sorry, I'll do like 2 more here. Hello from Canada. Cool. So yeah, 31 ISO. It's I don't know. It's like super secret. It's just low 1.0 on this 850. And I don't know what. I feel like my I have a battery in it. I feel like my 750 only goes down to 100. I think that's kind of what the lowest it goes is. No, it has a low 1, so I'm gonna guess that's maybe a 50. I don't actually know, but 31 is pretty good. You get lots of dynamic range. I know there's lots of talk about how you have to shoot at like a specific ISO to get the absolute maximum out of the sensor, but I haven't noticed that in actual practicality, I guess. That when I'm editing images, it's not really that big of a problem, that I don't have enough dynamic range. And also I shot with a D5 for a bunch of years, or for I guess like a year and a half. So I'm kind of used to dealing with no dynamic range, because that camera is not good for dynamic range. So I'm used to those limitations. So anything beyond that is great. Nikon D850 is absolutely fantastic. My 750 holds up. I think the 750 is actually better than my D5 in at least the actual files. I don't like my 750 for a lot of other reasons, but that's another rant for another day. So again, straight out of camera, looks pretty good to me. The sky kind of disappears a little bit more than I would want it to. I'm gonna try this summer preset here. That looks pretty good. That works very well with her red dress. And I'm gonna use a graduated filter here to pull down a little bit more. Actually, that kind of looks good. So there was just kind of this default, a little bit more warmth kind of added just to the sky here, which really accentuates kind of the forest fire look and feel, I guess. And then you can bring the highlights down just of, so basically what this is doing is this center line here is kind of when it starts to blend out. So this is getting all of that highlight correction. And as it gets into these two lines here, it kind of goes from 100% to 0 within kind of these bounds here. But I honestly like that quite a lot. I'm gonna add a little bit of dehaze just because I want to see what it does. I don't know if it does anything that I want to really keep. So the reason that I shoot the 58 is because I like the natural softness. So I don't really want to add back kind of the harshness, I guess, of dehaze. Not for their full gallery and not for on a computer for print, but maybe for, if it is for Instagram, I might actually do some like whatever the lux slider is, and as well as some structure and maybe some sharpening. But I think that is pretty good by my standards. So I'm gonna hit the previous button down here. You can't see it, it's actually hidden. It's hidden behind my head. There's a button that says previous, and it copies over all of your settings. And I think that's like pretty much done. So again, that's kind of like when it comes to shooting manual, that when you edit one image, that the next one should be pretty much bang on. And I'm happy with that. And then moving to this is from my 24, so a little bit different. I'm gonna copy over the settings and see how that goes. And again, pretty happy with this here. I'm going to, the graduated filter also copies over, and I'm gonna bring it down just a little bit. You can see the red is, actually, you know what, the entire scene when affected by this looks pretty good too. So as you can see with no graduated filter, it's very kind of, I don't know, it's good, it's beautiful, but it can be just like a little bit better, I think, like that. I'm also gonna add one, so I make a lot of natural vignettes, I guess, with graduated filters, so I'll bring down the exposure just like a little bit, something like that. Maybe that's too much. We'll find out. And just kind of drag in natural vignettes to kind of frame the couple. And you can adjust them specifically like this. And I'm pretty happy with something like that. It doesn't feel over-processed. It looks natural to the day. There's a little bit of vignette from the flaws of the lens, but I actually really like it. So I'm happy with that photo. So moving into, I guess, something a little bit different here, that now I'm down the hill photographing back up at them. And all of these graduated filters, even though I hit the previous and they copied over, are probably not going to stay. So I'm going to delete all of these. And I'm actually just going to try like the overall global image here first. And I think that looks pretty good. Something like that. And even though my preset's on it, again, like if you're shooting in strange and unusual conditions, you do kind of have to figure out what looks the best for your preset. And I'm exposing first for the couple, so I want them to look kind of their best. And once they are kind of properly exposed, at that point, I'll start kind of messing with the rest of the image. So I like them. There's like this kid down here, so I'm going to use this to make her go away. Bye-bye. As well as this here. So I'm going to let that load. Lightroom is being a little bit slow, but gone. So they were hanging out at the bench. Essentially, my location scouting is always that I go to whatever the most convenient car park is, near the most beautiful lookout point. I'm a big advocate of that, especially when your couples are wearing dresses and suits. I don't want to make them like hike to get these photos. That if I can find lookout points that look like we got lost in the forest, for the most part, I am pretty happy with that. So that brings in a lot of the forest fire. So I don't know how deep I want to go with that. I think that looks good. And then it's a little bit too bright over here, taking a little bit of interest. So you can also double click on these and they just reset. So maybe lower that just like a little bit to kind of make it a little more balanced, and maybe bring that up like that. Creating that natural vignette. Everything looks good. I'm very happy with that. I shot this specifically at 2.8 because I wanted to have a little bit more depth of field in it. Also, I knew that if I'm shooting at 1.4 at infinity, that I'm not really going to be able to do a whole lot to the image. And the reason that I shoot at 1.4 is to get kind of that natural softness from the lens. And if I'm at this distance, I don't really need to have like the nicest look on their skin because they're quite far away. So happy with that. Moving on. So this is kind of location number 1.5. So I'm going to use the same. I'm just super happy with the way that this summer warm preset kind of worked out here. And I'm honestly quite happy with that. And it might be a little warm for some people's tastes, but I tend to obviously err on the side of warm whenever possible because I think that life looks better in a sunset. And I'll show you what would happen. So that's, I would say, like more of kind of a natural style edit. That if I was editing specifically for skin tones, that it would be something like that. Maybe you're into that. That's totally cool. If I was shooting the technically correct white balance in my camera, that would have been correct for sure. But I'm going to warm it up a little bit to something like there. So the skin tones look all nice and good. I'm going to answer a few questions here real quick. I am excited for the new Nikon mirrorless for sure. And I hope that it lives up to all of our expectations because I'm kind of worried that it won't because there's so much hype with it. And especially I was so excited that I actually posted a thing on my Instagram story, which I never really do, promoting like a specific product that Nikon announced with their mirrorless that they're going to be making a 58 0.95. And as you can see with like all of this shoot and a lot of my other shoots, that I shoot that 58 millimeter at 1.4 quite a lot. So I'm very excited to have that focal length, which is a little bit weird, I guess, and strange to get used to. But once you do, it's a very, very good focal length. And I'm excited to have that ability to go down to 0.95 if needed. I'm not super stoked about the like 24 to 70 and those like the regular lenses that are going to come out for it. I'm hoping that with that, they also have an adapter that can just use any of my Nikon lenses because I have enough of their stuff. So hopefully that will come out soon and I can just use all of those lenses on a camera, hopefully with 5-point stabilization and all of that good stuff. So Nikon D750 goes down to 50 ISO, if anyone's wondering. Thank you for answering that question. All right. Hello from North Carolina. Mixed lighting. Editing each picture individually took forever. So Jonathan, I might have a solution for you. It's one that Lindsay uses a lot. It is by a company called Develop, which is actually the company that makes all of these. And Sam Hurd's girlfriend, Nessa Kay, who is also a fantastic photographer, has a preset pack that has, I forget what the actual, what the preset's called, or it's maybe in addition to a preset, but it basically fixes like weird mixed lighting. And it makes it like surprisingly good. It's like a one-click solution to almost everything. So maybe maybe head over to the Develop website and have a look and see if that is for you. Because it really does, even though their presets are a little bit more expensive, they're like $85 a pack, I think. The amount of time that it saved Lindsay is like absolutely incredible. I think that so I guess like our styles kind of go back to, I'm very boring and I shoot the same venues quite a lot, as you've probably noticed from the on-camera videos. So I am very comfortable going into a lighting condition, and I know I've kind of selected my venues knowing that I can do great work. So I don't really find myself in really strange and unusual conditions too often anymore. Or if I do, I know how to counter it kind of in real life easily. Whereas Lindsay is in a lot more different venues, finding herself in a lot more challenging conditions pretty much every weekend. So that's something that she relies on a lot, and it works really well. So shout out to Nessa K's Develop preset, even though I don't actually own them myself. So maybe take that review with a grain of salt and make sure that they're right for you. And will I be changing to mirrorless? I've tried to change to mirrorless. I like the form factor. I like everything about mirrorless, but I don't believe that Sony was the right solution for me, but I like my Nikon lenses. I like this look and feel that come off of them. So if Nikon creates something that's on A7 III scale quality and isn't a disappointment out of the box like some Nikon products have kind of been in the past, like the D750 and the D600, which was very quickly canceled, then I will give it the best shot possible because I want it to be successful. All right, so it's funny because like nothing really changed between these locations, but it's like significantly different. Maybe not. Maybe my exposure is just a little bit low. So yeah, that looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna cool that down a little bit because even for my standards, it's a little too hot. And this tree kind of coming out of his head, looking a little bit strange. I don't love that, so because I have other versions of it, I'm gonna delete that one with the delete key. And I wonder if I can copy previous from a photo that I've deleted. Apparently not. Unfortunate, but I totally understand. So I like that one a little bit better. I'm only really gonna edit one of these, I think, one of these three. So I'm gonna copy previous to them. Again, it's the button behind my head over here. And I think I like this one the best. This one might technically be the best, but I don't think Shannon looks like Shannon in that photo. So I think that's important to have photos that look like them. And deciding between this one and this one, I don't know if there's really a right answer. I think I like this one. There's a little more drama in the dress, so I'm going to delete that one. And I'm also going to do the same thing that I was doing earlier with the gradient tool here, and just kind of bringing back a little bit of this, a little bit of the forest fire ambience, but I think it looks pretty good. Cool. So again, basically just the preset with a little bit of blacks kind of toned down and a little bit of exposure, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I don't know if I like this wide shot. I like a lot of the things that are going on, but it's a bit of a weird wide shot, I guess. Maybe it's all right. I'm gonna edit it, and I will export it, and then I will decide later on what I'm feeling with that. So I think that looks pretty good. Graduated filter, bringing that down a little bit, and then something like this to just add the opposite of that, a little bit of shadows, bumped up in their faces, and then going to use a graduated filter to add a little bit of kind of a natural vignette to clean up the ground there. So as you can see, before, after, not a significant change. I really like the Nikon color palette. I really like kind of everything that just kind of naturally happens within a Nikon camera. So totally happy kind of with that look. I'm going to go back to just hitting this button over here. I will cycle through some things. We did change the location. So that's that's actually what the warm preset is. Sorry, my computer's freaking out because of Lightroom. And I also use a MacBook Pro, which is great, but kind of difficult in times. So something like that's really good. I could add a little bit of shadows to Mark's face, but I don't really think that's necessary. And then again, there's a big mountain back here that I kind of want to be at least a little bit visible. So I'm going to bring that in, and then maybe at this point I should actually bump up shadows. And the idea is to make it not look noticeable. You could use off-camera flash for something like this, but I think that by setting up an off-camera flash, I really do kind of impact the scene overall. So I'm happier to just kind of do what I can in post-production. Usually as global corrections, or as you've seen, like graduated filter corrections that really do kind of impact an area rather than just specific spot. All right, so that looks pretty good. I'm gonna try this because this is a global highlight correction, I think. And I kind of do want to have just a little bit more visibility in the mountains there, so I'm going to do something like this and just kind of bring in just like a touch of kind of what's happening back there. And you can layer these on top of each other. It's no big deal. Cool. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a natural vignette kind of leading into them, just to frame them a little bit better. And something like that I am totally happy with. Also, if you want something that's like really dramatic and really kind of like over the top almost, and like really, I feel like anytime that like extreme off-camera lighting is also added, that you also add like a little bit of clarity to kind of like make it even more intense, I guess. But I'm happy with kind of the softness of this. So that's again personal preference. That if you want to like do a little bit of clarity, or dehaze would also, like if I was doing landscape photography, I would be all over this slider because this brings back a lot of detail. Obviously too extreme in this circumstance, but I would be experimenting with that a lot more because there is a lot that can be brought back that exists in the frame. But my main purpose is to essentially edit just for the skin tones and go from there. All right, so up on the hill, I'm very happy with that just as like one click. I don't think that anything else really needs to be done to that image. I think that the less you can do to images in general, one, the more efficient you'll be, and also the more natural they kind of will feel image to image as a full gallery. I'm going to use the previous button that is below my head down here. And I'm super happy with that. And I do, I wish that I don't like to crop in non-camera in Lightroom, but I do wish that I would have got like a vertical that was something like that. I would have been super stoked to have that. Unfortunately, I only went for the horizontal. I didn't see that in camera as I was doing it, and I guess that's kind of the thing that you can stress all you want about the things that you missed on a shoot, or you can just kind of learn from them, and next time when you go back, just make sure that you correct all of those incorrectnesses. All right, so again, not a whole lot. That summer 2018 preset, and I'm going to see what I can kind of bring back of this. I don't know if that makes it a little too hazy, too gray. What I actually did, so as I mentioned before, anything that you've seen on Instagram up till this point has actually just been edited from my phone. And I was able to bring back that, I think I almost brought back more detail in my phone editing than I was able to in this. But I do kind of like the way that it falls kind of out of focus, I guess a little more abruptly than it probably should. Also, these trees look a little crazy and strange, but that's all right, I guess. So yeah, happy with that photo. Actually, you know what? It could use the natural vignette that we've been kind of adding to everything. A little more color down there. I like that. A little more framing. Happy with that. A little more dramatic. And this is, I guess this shoot is a lot more dramatic than I would typically be doing, so a little bit different. And my 24mm lens on my D850, or my D750 actually, I guess the timestamps are out, as I was talking about earlier in this, that if you connect to your phone, it throws your timestamps out. So halfway through the shoot, I guess this camera shifts, unfortunately. But happy with this image. I really do like the look and feel of wide-angle lenses shot wide open. And I know that that's not maybe a thing that is really a thing yet, but I'm really a huge fan. I'm happy that I spent the money to get the Nikon 24 1.4. The Sigma 1.4 24 is also really, really fantastic, but I like the natural softness to this lens and the focus fall off. It's very similar to the 58, I find, which is a lens that I obviously love. All right, so next up, I already have this shot, and I think that's a better shot than this here. So I'm just gonna delete that one for now. I'll deliver a few extras to my couple, but for the most part, I'll probably deliver, I would say 30 to each of the couples from this shoot, and they'll be super happy with them. And I really do attempt to not just deliver the same frame over and over again when possible. I do kind of pick the best one and make sure that that is the most optimal one as possible. Again, like this one, I think the first image over here is better than it. You can easily make these people go away if you want, as well as this here. So that's easy enough. Is it? I don't know. Maybe I do like it. I'm gonna leave it. I'm actually gonna add a little bit of clarity to it to make it a little more maybe dramatic than the others. And I'm gonna drag in this natural vignette again from kind of this side over here. And now that we're working on it, I'm gonna do the thing that I've been doing to everything, making it a little arguably too forest fiery, but at least it shows the depth and it shows the mountain. All right. This was a very gorgeous location, so I totally 100% agree. Um, I do follow a lot of photographers from other countries. I like. I don't know what wedding photographers. I feel like most of the wedding photographers I follow are either from the U.S. or from Australia. For whatever reason, like the density of great wedding photographers coming out of Australia is like super disproportionate to their population. So I think that's like, I don't know, somebody needs to do a study on that and why the wedding photographers there are so much better than everyone else. So this is obviously a little underexposed here, but bumping it up with the summer preset, it looks like great. So I knew that this preset was going to work on it because it's been working on everything so far. That's just the cool preset overlaying itself for some reason. There we go. And we're back. So super happy with that. As I said in the in the editing video, that was part of the 30-day course, that I run all of this through Portraiture afterwards. Portraiture is a plugin that goes into Photoshop, and it basically just goes through and automatically smooths all skin. And it is the greatest money I've ever spent, and it makes my couple so incredibly happy because they're like, we love the photos, and I know that like 10% of why they love the photos is because their skin looks so good. So I recommend getting Portraiture. It's by a company called Imagenomic, I believe, but definitely worth the money, especially if you're processing lots of pictures. And it's also it's totally automated, so you just like you can either use it actually out of Lightroom if you want. I use it out of Photoshop, the other Adobe product. Because I also shrink everything. So when I deliver, I have Photoshop action that goes through and it shrinks everything down to 98% width, but keeps it the regular height so everybody loses like 5 pounds or whatever. And then it smooths out their skin so everybody looks a little bit better than real life, but I think people appreciate it and they understand that photography sometimes is a lie. It's a good lie though. Cool. Pretty happy with that. Good to see if anything kind of comes back in the mountain here. A little bit of detail did. I don't want to, again, like bring back way too much detail of it because then it's just going to like be really overpowering and it's going to be like this dehaze that's like way too much. But I don't know. Like there's probably a balance in there that you could find that you could bring back some of that dehaze, some of that detail and paint it back in. One other thing that I didn't actually cover in the 30-day course that I do from time to time is I will, if I can get like, if I have the most perfect background, but the image as a global image just doesn't really work too well together, I'll export something that's like what I want the background to be. So if I wanted the background to be somewhere like around there, like nice and warm and soft, and then I would do something like that as a second frame to get the couple. And then I put both of those layers on top of each other in Photoshop, and I use the I guess there's like 5 ways to do everything. I would use the history brush if I'm like kind of making adjustments in Photoshop to paint back to how I imported it. Or you can go, I guess, the way of doing like the whole layering mask thing where you kind of paint in exactly what parts you want. But you can always find like a really good balance usually within that if you have a great background that you really, really, really want to use, but you're just not able to. What do I use to stream these? I use OBS, which is this right here. And my computer is super struggling to do anything because of the resources that Lightroom takes, and also OBS to like compress my screen and my face onto the screen and then upload it to the internet. So I think this is pretty much the limitation of my MacBook Pro. All right, so that looks really good. I'm maybe the most happy with one of these images here. I might go back and I might find like the expression just before or after. If you've watched my videos, you know I shoot really fast, and that's kind of the reason that this is like the 98% good expression on both of them, but I think that there's one better. Also, an interesting thing that happened was that there was kind of like almost this distracting mountain here over in Banff that just kind of like disappears a little bit, and I'm happy to let that go because it's kind of coming out of their head. And I know that these trees are also kind of coming out of their heads as well, but they're nice and soft and out of focus, and that's why I like shooting at 1.4 so that those elements aren't too apparent. If I was shooting like a 24-70 at 2.8 or f4, a lot of this there would be very pretty much everything would be in focus. So if I can shoot with a prime and I can utilize that extra using the 1.4 and making an even better image from it that feels softer and a little more surreal, I guess, within the grounds of where we were, I'm happy to do that. You'll see in the video, the behind the scenes video that will eventually be out from the shoot, that we had to ask. There was some lovely ladies here having a picnic, and we asked them very nicely if we could do photos for 5 minutes, and they did. I don't know if I love that photo. Lindsay was also shooting during the shoot, as well. So she was shooting on her Fuji XE3 and just pretty much on like an 18mm lens crop sensor, so something more like a 24, I guess, for the entire shoot. So she has a lot of the shots that I'm missing. So I didn't shoot heavily in this location right here because I thought that it was nice to share. A little off center. I don't love it. I think that I'm going to deliver Lindsay's image from that specific time. All right, so bumping the exposure up, I think this will be something that I like. That is something that I'm very happy with. And I almost like the fact that for some reason there's no real harsh vignette happening here, that this is a little more balanced and even of an image. One problem when shooting with hats specifically that are darker is that they do kind of create under eye problems, I guess. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit in Photoshop because I want it to look as though it actually did in real life. And in real life, it didn't really look like that, although maybe the camera took the picture. Whatever, we make people look good, you understand. This is kind of the same. Maybe if this one's better, I might just stick with this one. I think I like that shot better than the previous one. So maybe this is the one that gets delivered and I don't have to worry too hard about going in and changing anything from the last frame. This is my 5% tilt, which usually happens on every image. But surprisingly not on videos, which is important, I think. So if you, maybe that's a hidden tip, that if you learn to shoot video, that your 5% tilt, if you do have one of those, because I think that a lot of us do, it is important, I think, to shoot video in order to just like know to shoot directly kind of vertical or horizontal rather. And it definitely has helped me a bit. Not 100% there yet. I still do shoot on a bit of a slant from time to time. Also, this frame's a little bit wonky. Nothing's really symmetrical. So this is going to be the Instagram almost square. So happy with that. I'm going to bring down the highlights and see kind of how that looks. I think something like that's a little bit better. So just bringing down the exposure a little bit in this gradient mask, and very happy. And again, kind of natural vignette. Might tone that down a little bit. It looks a little too harsh. Something like that makes me quite happy. All right, 4 more to go. I'm going to try just copying over. I'm hitting the previous button under my face over here. Under my half face, sorry, I'm not framing myself correctly. I like something like that a lot. So make sure that the horizon is straight. I actually shot this correct in camera, kind of. So that's nice. And even if I reset everything, I guess there's a pole in that shot. The problem with shooting with both Lindsay and I is that we were trying to stay out of each other's ways while also trying to get like the best shots possible. So that was like a little bit of a struggle, I think. And it was definitely like a cool experience to go out with 2 photographers and 2 couples and just kind of like be intertwining with photos. I think that it was the right thing to do. All right, I'm gonna go with this Summer Warm again, which I've done for the entire shoot. So this is a little more of just kind of a basic them smiling face in the camera. I'm going to bring down this mount and bring it back a little bit. And I think that looks pretty good. If you do want to get into things like you can actually like, maybe not his shirt. So I guess one of the problems is that his shirt is the same color as the water. So this water was a little bit more turquoise in real life. It was a little more, I would say something like that is kind of like accurate to real life. And when I add a little bit of warmth or a little bit more warmth than maybe I should, it really does get rid of the nice blues of the lake. So you're able to usually come down here and kind of work with the blues and greens and change specific colors. As you can see the lake changing there a little bit, and you can add saturation to it or brightness to it. So maybe that's a helpful tip if you're ever shooting near beautiful places that when you get home and you're like, why doesn't it look as good as it did in real life? There's a good chance that it's because of that. So this is a little bit under, maybe completely under. And because I'm shooting at ISO 50, which I guess is the base ISO of the Nikon D750, so that's been confirmed. I know that even if I am way under, that I'm able to that I can almost overexpose it. And I selected this one because I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted it or not, but I do like it. And I like to have a little bit more of the sky, and then maybe a little bit more couple. And I think that conveys kind of what it actually felt like at that time of the day, which I think is kind of important to do, to actually kind of show what it looks like. And I think that this is kind of what it looked and felt like, obviously with little enhancements to reality, but I'm pretty happy. All right, so last one's here. I selected this one in pretty much darkness, so I'm happy the expressions look good. And I'm very happy with this. Like, this is, it's funny because if you go to Lindsay's Instagram, she edited this exact, not this exact photo, but a photo kind of from where I'm standing to the left, entirely differently, and it looks great. And it's just, I don't know, it's very interesting to be in the exact same environment to see two completely different editing styles. Whereas I like this, it's a little more dark and moody, which I think that this entire kind of shoot goes with. And one thing that I actually have to be careful of is that I don't want to skew my entire portfolio to be kind of dark and moody, which I fear that I've kind of done by posting all these images for the past couple of days, because I'm super happy with them. All right, so this is at the top of the Banff gondola. And we went up there as a very last location because it's like absolutely beautiful views. And we knew that if we went up for sunset that there would be nobody around. But because of the forest fires, there was also no real things to look at. So you had about maybe a ½ kilometer of visibility. So these are all just like the clouds from the forest. But got one photo I like. And again, you can kind of see, I guess maybe this is more a testament to the 58mm 1.4 and the way that I really just kind of love as like it kind of washes into focus here. I really love this kind of foreground out of focus, the way that this all kind of like blends together so nicely. And then kind of the sharpness in here that's nice, and then kind of the fall off the back of her hair that I think creates an image that you can't really explain why you like it. And if you saw two images side by side, you'd be like, they're kind of the same, but kind of like this one better, and I don't know why. I think that's kind of what the 58 Nikon does a lot. So it's one of my favorite lenses because of that. Also, the Tamron 85 also gets, I would say, pretty accurate to this as well, as far as like the same kind of features go and the same character. I stay away kind of from the Sigma 50, even though it's like a technically amazing piece of glass. It's almost too accurate, and it doesn't really create kind of the look and feel, I guess, that I kind of like from this specific image and from other images. And you don't see it in every single image. You see it every now and then, like in one or two photos, maybe every like 20 photos. But it really does kind of add something extra, I think. And it's a lens that I repurchased because of that, this 58, because I just missed it whenever I sold it. But if you're looking for something, especially if you're a photo video shooter, definitely get the that Tamron 85mm 1.8. It's like, I would say the lens that I use by far the most out of any other lens that I own. So those are my thoughts for today. I'm going to answer some questions here. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm going to do my best to answer a few. And then I think I have to go over to a friend's house. I think Lindsay wants to watch Bachelor in Paradise. So I guess I'm going to be doing that. Did you once use Windows to edit my photos? Yeah, I use Windows for, I'm actually a computer science graduate. So for basically my entire life, all I did was I used Windows and I programmed in Windows. The reason that I am with Mac now is one, because I just kind of got sick of like the malware and viruses, and I got a Mac laptop, and I was just kind of using it to write and to do some like basic image editing, and very quickly it kind of took over my entire life. The downside, I guess, with Mac is that if you are getting into the higher end production, like specifically video, is that you really hit a ceiling when you're editing with a Mac, and not really a ceiling, a money ceiling, that you really have to spend a lot of money to get like a top of the line system. Whereas you can build like an $8,000 Macintosh computer in Windows for like $3,200. So that's like the major downside, I guess. But it's in Canada, it's 100% business expense. So at the end of the year, if you want something and you have a little bit too much money in your bank account, go and spend money on something that's 100% write-off, so you don't have to pay tax on that money. Where's your focus when shooting the couple, and what is the first setting you change if the light changes? So the way that I shoot, I guess like the way that I put my manual settings together is that I always kind of want to be one, I guess I don't really have that much to think about. So as you can see, I'm shooting pretty much wide open all the time. So that really never changes in a circumstance like this. If I am shooting a group shot, if there's like multiple layers, I will be stopping down to f4 or f5.6, or just kind of changing it around a little bit to make sure everyone's in focus. But for couples, for the most part, even shooting at 1.4 as long as you're aware of kind of where their eye lines are and their eye lines are in focus and on the same plane, I'm very happy to stay at 1.4. My ISO is usually just as low as I can get away with, so that's why you saw me shooting like 31 ISO, which I didn't even know was a number, for quite some time, and then now I'm at 80 because it's after dark now. And so pretty much the only thing I have to worry about is my shutter speed, and I want to make sure that my shutter speed is usually from like 100 to 200 as a minimum, because I am photographing people and people move, and I do walk, and I'm walking while taking pictures of moving people, and well, I do try to kind of pace with them to at least be on the same focus plane, so my autofocus doesn't have to work too hard. Whenever you're stepping, and if you're like taking a frame while you're stepping, it does, I guess, like kind of, it could create some problems. So that's pretty much like the thing. As long as I stay above 100 to 200 of a shutter speed, or I guess technically whatever the lens focal length is, you're supposed to stay above of that. So if you're shooting like a 7200 and you're at 200, you're technically supposed to be at 1/200th of a shutter speed. Depending on the lens that you're shooting and if it has stabilization in it, sometimes that's not entirely true. But that's kind of my go-to, and then I just bump ISO up to keep myself kind of at these settings here. Maybe that's the faster answer. So f1 point, whatever the wide open is, staying around 1/25th of a second, and then based on that, I'm just changing my ISO to kind of compensate that to make sure that it's that I'm at least getting enough light in. And again, like the lower you can keep your ISO, obviously the better, because you get more dynamic range and you can save shots that are like this one that was dramatically underexposed in camera. For some reason that felt right to me. Taking the pictures, I guess maybe it's dark out so the LCD looked brighter, but you can like just kind of do whatever you want as far as actual skin tones go. And it doesn't really, like, it will start to get a little bit grainy, but it's really not unbearable by any means when you're shooting such a low ISO. So put that back to there. Cool. It is fantastic on the top of the gondola. So we were going to do the walk. There's at the top of the Banff gondola, there's like kind of a beautiful lookout, but it looks a little too kind of industrial almost. So we're going to take the walk down like this like big staircase, and we started to. And I guess the problem is that when you start walking and you're just like having like a good old walk and you're like, oh, stairs, no problem. And you forget what altitude you're at and you're very quickly out of breath and you have to make it all the way back. And that sucks. So those are my thoughts on stairs at altitude. Do I prefer Lightroom CC or Lightroom Classic? I am just using kind of whatever, like essentially whatever Adobe wants to give me as part of my subscription. I use a lot of their products, so it makes sense for me to be as part of their subscription. So whatever the current model is, I like CC. I don't know if there's like any differences really for the most part. So if you have like a standalone version that's already paid for, I don't know if it's worth upgrading really. They change like presets. So now if you purchase these presets, they come as XMPs rather than the old Lightroom like preset, whatever I think it was like LR preset or something was the old extension. So those are, I guess, like the main differences. So if you want to buy new presets from people, unless they have a legacy version, which Develop actually does. So if you're looking at the Develop presets, they'll give you a legacy for the older versions of Lightroom. That might be one of the only reasons. There is other functionality. Obviously, it gets better and better. One other thing that I might recommend is that all of your favorite photos that you take, keep the RAWs of them. If you're building your portfolio and you have all these beautiful JPEGs, keep all of the RAWs. One, because your style might change over time, and two, because with every iteration, or at least like every couple iterations and updates of Lightroom, the processing just gets better. So it's going to make a better image from that same RAW file that you shot like 10 years ago if 10 years from now you load that into Lightroom and use it. So just keep those RAW files around of your favorite photos or your favorite shoots, because they will come in handy. And I have lost a fair share of RAW files, so I am, I guess, the person I should make a better video just specifically about that topic, because I think it's really important. Yes, I totally recommend the 85mm lens. It's really, really, it's like my favorite lens for pretty much everything. If I was just going out with one single lens to an engagement shoot, to a family shoot, to even if I had to shoot a wedding on one lens, I'd pick an 85 1.8. Even though you lose the versatility of a 72 or a 24 to 70, I think that the images that you take look a heck of a lot better for the most part. And again, that's just my taste that I really like. As you've kind of seen, like the soft, like out of focus backgrounds, and I guess this is kind of accentuated by forest fires, but I really kind of like that depth of field fall off. And as a wedding photographer, it's also very, very helpful to, I guess, like be able to hide things. So if you're in a getting ready situation and there's just like all kinds of junk all over the room, or you're in like a hotel room with 150 people, or you're doing a Greek wedding and there's just like thousands of things in the room. No disrespect to Greek people, but I've just done a few Greek weddings that are like, it's hilarious. The getting ready is like, wow, like what's, and if you're shooting with a really low depth of field, you can kind of hide those things and blend them into the background rather than having them like tack sharp in focus. And I guess that kind of leads into the next question. Would you recommend a 24-70 plus a 7200 for beginner wedding photographers or prime lenses? I prefer prime lenses. It's what I kind of learned on. I don't know if there's like, if it's right or wrong. I really, really love the look of prime lenses. I think that they can get you out of a lot of problems too that a 24-70 2.8 couldn't. Specifically, if you ever find yourself in like really, really dark and challenging conditions, to have a 35 like f2 or f1.4 is a lot more helpful, I think, to getting like the shots that you need to get. And even if you have a 24-70, that maybe you can get a wide variation of images, but I think that just getting like great images from a few different focal lengths is a lot better. There's, I think, a lot more impact into those specific images as well. That a 24-70, I actually made a video about this a little while ago. Kind of the way that it goes is that when I shoot one, I feel like there's no real like difference between all the images, where when you're shooting with like, say, a 24 prime or a 35 prime on one body and then an 85 on the other, there's a very strong kind of like snappy, crisp differentiation between those images. And I like that a lot. I think that it makes for a way better and a way more impactful gallery kind of overall. But you will lose some shots. There are some shots that, like if a kid runs at me and I have an 85 on and my 24 is on the side of my body and I can't like get that up in time to get that shot, I am going to miss that shot. But you just have to be like kind of hyper aware and almost start to predict the future, which does start to happen. I think the more weddings that you do, you just kind of predict what you're able to capture, and you can kind of foresee events, because even though things happen really fast and there's a lot going on all the time at weddings, it's kind of like it's slower paced photography, I would say, for the most part. All right, so what do you recommend for learning to guide couples to pose naturally? I don't know what courses. I don't know if there's like, so Sam Hurd on his Patreon a while ago, he did kind of his breakdown of his posing. His posing is a lot more, I would say, artistic than mine. Mine is a lot more like, if you watch my videos, it's like people just walk around and I try to keep them like as natural as possible. Sam, I love Sam's work because he is very different from me in the sense that like everybody is a little bit more posed, a little bit more stoic. I think his kind of, at least like internal feeling is that everybody's not smiling all the time, so why should they be smiling in like every single picture, which I think is pretty cool. So he does a lot more just kind of relax and just like, he really embraces the elements as well. So if you join his Patreon, I'm sure that he would be, that's somewhere on there, and it's a pretty good guide from what I hear. So yeah, maybe something that's cool to you. Also, he does workshops as well, so if you want to see him actually do a live shoot, that's a thing you can do as well. All right. Cool. Thanks for the kind words, everyone. I really appreciate it. It's fun to do these things, and it's I think it gives you a different perspective on your work as well. That I spent so long kind of just in an echo chamber of just kind of doing my own thing, and there were a few years where I was doing good work, but I wasn't really pushing myself, and I had no real desire to push myself. So I kind of used this as an outlet to go out. Like, this wasn't a shoot that had to happen. I literally did this because I wanted to hang out with Mark and Shannon, and I was like, two, like it'd be pretty nice to have some mountain photos. And then I also wanted to make the video for you guys to hopefully inspire some of you to book a trip and like go out and do something like this, because all you need is like 2 friends or 1 friend, or if you're into landscapes, you can just do landscapes. But I think that it's very cool. So thank you for watching and being here. All right, I'll do a few more. What don't you like about the D750? So my D750 problems, they go way back to the beginning when they delivered a product that wasn't really ready to be launched. I still have a camera. This is my third or fourth D750, and it is still, it's one of the ones that got the recall on the shutter. So the good news is whenever I want to sell it, I can send it to Nikon. They'll put a new shutter in it, and then I can sell it as essentially a new camera. So that's cool. What I don't love about it is the buffer speed. So that you can only shoot like 8 images in a row before the buffer jams up. And if you fill it, it takes a while to write. If if you're somebody that like takes like a single frame and is like very methodic with your film or your photo taking, almost like film, then it's like totally a great camera for you. But I shoot a lot when I shoot, and then I also shoot photo video. So when my buffer is filling up and I'm trying to switch to video, it doesn't let you actually write a video until all of the images have been written to the card. So that's like a huge obstruction to my workflow and getting moments, especially at wedding days when I'm doing photo video coverage. I find that to be really challenging. I also don't love the fact that it's a 1/4000th shutter, whereas every other camera realistically goes up to 1/8000th, or if you're shooting a mirrorless, you go up to like 1/infinite. And maybe that's not a problem for a lot of people, but I shoot like my lens is wide open, as you saw in the shoot, pretty much the entire shoot. So to go outside and to have to stop down just because my D750 doesn't allow me to shoot wide open because the ISO doesn't go low enough and I don't want to screw in an ND is kind of a problem for me. Also, I found that it just has some really weird phantom problems that really freak me out. Doing video specifically, you'll get the like recording interrupted error quite often. And I don't understand. There's like no rhyme or reason. It's with all different cards. It's like fully updated firmware, but it'll still give me that error from time to time. And when it gives you that error, it kind of blocks you out from doing anything for like 10 seconds. And maybe 10 seconds isn't a big deal if you're out shooting landscapes. You're like, whatever, I'll just like close it off, let it do its thing. But if it's like entrances, like if people are like being introed into a room where it's like a first kiss or something, and you lose that 10 seconds, it's kind of a big deal. So those are my thoughts on it. Beyond that, like obviously, like I still have one. I still love it. I used it on this shoot. Like half of these photos are from it. Like this photo's from it. That's a lie. This photo's from it. That's a lie. Some of these photos are from it. This one's from it. Anything with the 24 is from my D750. I love it. I also love the fact that it's a smaller camera body as well, but it just doesn't do everything, I guess, for me, specifically for video. So that's the reason that I went to the D5. And then the reason that I jumped from the D5 to the D850 was because there's no flippy screen on the D5, because it's, I guess, for professionals, and professionals don't get flippy screens. But for video, it's like, it's the nicest thing in the world. So like the way that I'm able to stabilize my videos so well, because I shoot everything handheld, is, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. I'll do it like up by my face, which is maybe weird. So I basically have the mirror out flat like this, or the LCD flat like this, and I have it right against my chest. So I have 3 points of stabilization. I have 1 point here, 1 point here, and the last point of actually just like pushing into, and I have like some tension just like pushing into it. And that is like the easiest way to stabilize any lens for video. As well as there's also ways that I used to do, there's a lot going on over here, that you can kind of put your strap around your arm like this. Sorry, I'm tiny in this corner here. That you can put your strap around your arm like this and kind of stabilize video like this as well. That's another way to get stable, that you have those 3 points. So you have 1 point here, 1 point here, and the third point is up here. So if you're a shorter photographer, that's probably the way to go, so that you can get at least at your eye level. I tend to be, I'm only like 6 foot, but I tend to be a little bit taller than my couples. So being somewhere around here is usually, I would say, like just below their eye line. So that's kind of what's natural and comfortable for me. And also like shooting like this all day kind of hurts my shoulder. So I like this. It's nice, compact. You don't look out of place. You don't look like you're like trying to do too much. You don't look like you're the guy running around the room like trying to get the shot. You're a little more calm and collected. So that's kind of why I dig that. All right. So how do you go about finding a wedding or a shoot in the mountains when you live in Ontario? So I talked about this at the very, very beginning, but I kind of knew that it was going to come up again because I knew that nobody was really watching in the very beginning. And pretty much the way that I did it was I just knew one dude out in Calgary. So I knew Mark. He was my old boss. This is Mark's face. So this is Mark. I knew him from like way back. They live in Canmore. I was like, hey, Mark, can we go out and do a shoot? I'd love to photograph you guys again, because I did their engagement photos way back in the or not in the mountains, way back like downtown, like just literally downstairs from my building 9 years ago when they got married. And I was coming out again, and he's the marketing director of Brewster, which is awesome, like a travel company. So we're going to do some stuff together for like travel photography. And then also, it was just like an excuse to hang out, and everybody likes having good pictures taken, and when you have an excuse, and they got to get away from their kids for a day. Beyond that, like There's lots of strange and interesting ways, I guess, to find couples. One is like just go on Instagram and just start messaging people that clearly like to take photos of themselves and their boyfriends, or I guess of themselves and their girlfriends, or however that works out. It surprisingly does work pretty often, especially if they're like locals. The other way that I'm actually that I'm setting up a shoot for 2 weeks from now, so I'm back in this area, back in Alberta, for a few shoots, and I'm actually partnering with a place called the Emerald Lake Lodge, which is like, I would say the Emerald Lake Lodge is like, I'm going to say it's the nicest hotel in Canada. Not by price point, it's expensive, but it's not like that expensive. But just like go look it up and it'll blow your mind. It's essentially, if you can picture Lake Louise in your head, which is kind of like iconic and nice teal water, you are essentially on that lake, but in a little tiny cabin, and everybody has like these little like 2-floor, you can be on the first or second floor of the like all the little cottages, and it's like the coolest place in the world. So I'm partnering with them to do a few shoots for their social media. I don't think that I will know any of the couples. It's just like me reaching out to them being like, hey, I'd love to do some giveaways for either guesting at the hotel or for people that want to come into the property for the day. Like, how do we work together? And that all just came together like from a simple email. So wherever you're going in the world, just like, don't be afraid to reach out, especially if you do like great travel work or you have any sort of portfolio to show. The thing that I always rely on is like the Antarctica trip. It's like the coolest trip that I've ever done, and I'll never do anything on that level of cool again. But the investment in it to do it has now paid off like significantly by just having that portfolio piece. It's a documentary if you haven't seen it. It's on the main YouTube page. It's probably worth watching. I like that trip a lot. But now that's like my marketing piece, that if I am sitting at a new hotel and I'm like, hey, like, I'm like thinking of visiting you guys on like August 10th to 12th. Here's what I've done in the past. I'd love to like do a gallery of like 3 or 4 images for you guys. Happy to set up like shoots with like any of your staff if you want. Like, let me know where like the value for you guys is in order to like comp me a room. And sometimes that works out. Sometimes you don't hear from them. Sometimes it works out way better than you'd ever expect. And people like, they go out of their way to do like better collaborations with you, and they come with their ideas and they want to promote you over social media before they arrive, which has kind of happened in this case. So that's like, I don't know, something really cool. And I have the full course on it. It's taylorjacksoncourses.com, brief plug. But essentially, like, it just boils down to having no limits for whenever you want to do something. Or if you book into a hotel and you see that like maybe they're at like 50% occupancy on their like more expensive rooms, just send them an email and be like, hey, we're booked into like the basic room, but if you have something available, we'd love to feature it on our social media. Send them links, send them demographics, whatever you can. You can also kind of boost those demographics, I guess, through like Facebook ads and things like that. That if you need to get eyeballs on stuff to make it look like you're somebody, that totally works as well. I've definitely done that in the past. And then it also, I guess that's also a litmus test when you spend money to advertise something, and you start to see like what people share. That if people are sharing, like if pieces of content really connect with people and they really start to share it, you understand like, hey, maybe if I want to get those eyes on more things, that maybe I do something similar to this, and it, I don't know, it kind of directs you to a more profitable and better life, I guess, in travel photography. Because I've found that I essentially, I tried to, I don't know if anyone's seen Dark Tourist on Netflix, but I essentially tried to pilot that show like 6 years ago. I really want to do it. That's why I went to Chernobyl. I went to like Jerusalem, Israel, a bunch of different places. And I really wanted to create like a show that was like, that these are tours for like unconventional people. And that was kind of like where I began with just kind of like reaching out to companies and being like, hey, like, I want to do this thing. Like, how do we work together? Like, what can we do? Are you into it or are you not? Like, if you're not, just like, let me know, like, no problem. There's somebody else on the way. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. Don't be afraid to reach out to people, DM them over Instagram. As long as you have like a non-weird social presence, they'll probably see that you're a photographer, and just be super upfront that like, this is super selfish of you to ask them to take pictures because this is for your portfolio and you're really just a pawn in it. Maybe word it better than that. But just be honest that like, you want to do this, like that there's no hidden sales tactics. Like, I'm not going to give you like an hour shoot, but every digital file is going to cost you $150. Just be honest and forthcoming, and you probably will get at least 1 or 2 people that want to do something. And expand your area as well. That if you're looking in like for Banff specifically, like if you have a good portfolio, people probably will come from Calgary. That's like an hour drive. Probably no problem for them to do that. Or if you go up more north or more west, I guess, maybe some people will come from Golden. Like just kind of just see who's doing things and just get in contact with them. All right, I'll do like 2 more questions here. Fuji. So we use Fuji as a travel camera. I don't know if it's around. It's an XE3, and it's really great, and I love it. In a professional setting, I find that it locks up a little bit too much. Maybe we shoot too fast and we're too demanding on it. So I don't love that aspect of it, but beyond that, like it's a great, like if you're doing photography only, I would say that Fuji would probably be the camera manufacturer that I would be with today, because I love the form factor, I love the way that their files look, and I love specifically for, I guess, travel is like that everything just syncs so easily to your phone. Once you get it set up, it's a pain to set it up. But as soon as you get that happening, it's just like, oh, like so good that you just like your I guess Instagram story game like just accelerates rapidly because all of the photos that you're taking are now with like a professional camera with like a beautiful film type in it, and you just get these like perfect JPEGs right to your phone as soon as you take them. So that is really cool, and I hope that the Nikon mirrorless can emulate that in some way. But yeah, I'll have a look at the XT3. I'm definitely interested in it. I'm probably more excited over the next like 2 years now about maybe not 2 years, maybe even just a year, maybe the next 8 months about where all the mirrorless systems kind of go. That with Fuji coming out with something and with Sony coming out with something, which I assume they're coming out with the A7S III, I hope. Because that's something that I will actually buy, even though I'm not a huge believer in Sony for photography. Sony for video really does just like absolutely kill it, and I need a new professional camera for when I get hired to do commercial jobs. So I'll want that for sure for that. And then Panasonic's been kind of like weirdly quiet for a little bit, so I don't know if there's like an XH6 or something coming out the pipe. I don't know. But then with Nikon releasing a professional full frame mirrorless, that's going to make Canon have to get into that ballpark as well to not be left behind. And there's all kinds of weird things. Like we live kind of in this bubble of North America, I guess, or at least I live in this bubble of kind of Canada / the US. And what happens here doesn't necessarily happen around the rest of the world. Like this is my Canon mirrorless. This Canon mirrorless apparently is the #1 like selling camera in Japan. Not this one specifically, but the Canon mirrorless system. In Japan, if you live there, it's just like everybody has a Canon mirrorless, which is not true around here. I know very few people that have them. But it's going to be interesting over the next little bit to see, I guess, kind of how things go. All right. Sam's Instagram is I am the Sam, I think. Search for Sam Hurd, H-U-R-D is his last name. His photos will blow you away, and then you'll just feel bad about your work forever, which is how I feel most of the time when I look at his portfolio. Shooting my first wedding next month. Just came across your videos and sold me on the 135. That 135 Sigma is so good. I absolutely love it. But my issue with it and why I don't bring it to every wedding is essentially because it's a very heavy lens, and if you're replacing like a 7200 with that lens, that's an awesome choice. But I still needed my 7200 for video because the 135 is not stabilized, sadly. So I had to carry both, and that's like just really heavy. I like to have everything on my person, so it kind of ruined my back a couple of weekends. But it is really great. I love it whenever you have lots of space that if you can go out, if you're in a field or wherever, that you can get away from the couple to do photos. That 135 is like the best lens ever. The part where it becomes super challenging is if you're like downtown in a city, that you're very rarely going to have opportunities to use a lens of that length, which is very sad because it looks so good. So I don't know, I've been trying to not buy the 105 Sigma for a little while now. I am interested to see how it kind of matches up against the Nikon one, because I love the Nikon one for the same reason that I love this 24 and this 58, is just kind of that like really nice and soft, like the overall look and feel of it. So I don't know, gonna check out the 105 Sigma, see how it is, and maybe try to convince myself for the next month or two to not get the Nikon 105 again. That's all. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you being here, spending your time with me, and making my dreams of making videos on the internet a little bit more possible, because it's kind of sad whenever you do a live stream and there's only one person. So I really appreciate that that this was beneficial to a lot of people. So thanks for watching, and I should be back tomorrow or the following day with the actual video from this, and it will be in proper HD so that you're able to actually see everything in detail. And that's all.